You ever hear of the no true Scotsman fallacy? It's when someone protects a belief by redefining it every time there's a problem. Well, no true Scotsman would do fill in the blank, put butter on their toast, whatever. Well, the belief then never has to take the responsibility because the moment something goes wrong, it gets pushed outside the category. You keep changing what no true Scotsman does. It creates this ideal, this Scotsman, that doesn't actually exist, and so the real issue in front of you gets redefined to the point that you're no longer allowed to critique it. And it's not just limited to national pride. It happens in religion all the time too. A Christian leader abuses someone physically, spiritually, sexually, whatever it may be, and we go, well, no true Christian would do that. You deal with narcissists in church and you say, oh, well, that was just because you were in the wrong denomination. A church causes harm. Well, that was just not the real church. They didn't have the real gospel. Whenever someone shares a story about church hurt or abuse, the responses like that come in pretty fast. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Not all Christians. Well, that wasn't a real Bible-believing church. You were just in the wrong denomination. And listen, even if all of that were true, it still doesn't deal with the actual problem. Let's talk about why. Hey everyone, I'm Colin, the resident nerd and Bible scholar here at the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered. At some point, you have to stop explaining away all the stories people are telling and start asking, why are there so many of them? You know, I used to respond the same way growing up in independent fundamental Baptist circles. I used to say things like, well, they just weren't actually following Jesus, or they weren't the right kind of Baptist. The abuse was an exception. And then I started actually listening to the stories people were telling. And what really broke that for me was Eric Skwarczynski's Preacher Boys podcast. I went in expecting a few isolated cases that I could write off as bad apples, outliers, the rare failures. What I found instead was story after story after story after story. Different churches, different states, different leaders, different denominations sometimes, but the same patterns. And eventually I had to ask myself, how many exceptions does it take before they stop being exceptions and become the rule? How many bad apples do you have to have in a bushel before you throw out the whole bushel? How much mold can you cut off a loaf of bread, explaining it away, trimming around it, before there's no bread left at all? At some point, the problem isn't that people are overreacting. The problem is that the rot is systemic. And imagine with me a toothbrush company. All right, this is going to get a little ridiculous, but I think it'll prove the point. Imagine this toothbrush company claims they have the best toothbrush on the market. They say it'll solve all your dental needs. Then 5 people return it, saying it doesn't work. Then 10, then 50, then 100, then 1,000, then 10,000. And they're not only just saying it doesn't work, but that it actively harms people. At some point, you're going to stop blaming user error. At some point, you admit the product itself has a flawed design. That's where I think we're at with Christianity and the church. Now, that does not mean that Christianity has not done good. It absolutely has. I am still a Christian myself. And it doesn't mean that people today can't benefit from Christianity. Some do, very deeply. We can talk about the great things Christianity has done throughout history, the role it's played in ending slavery, in founding hospitals, in advancing science, in promoting human dignity. But then we also have to talk about how it has encouraged slavery, how it has fueled anti-scientific thinking, how it has kept people from medical care because they were told to pray harder, how it's contributed to children dying because treatment was denied, slaughtered people during the Crusades, propped up nationalism and empire. Two things can be and often are true at the same time. And honestly, I think we may have crossed the halfway mark. I think Christianity has caused almost more harm than good in the world. I know some of you will probably disagree with me on that, and by no means does that erase the good Christianity has done. But the good also doesn't cancel out the harm. You know, an abusive husband can hit his wife and still buy his kid a birthday present. The present doesn't cancel out the abuse. In the same way, good outcomes don't excuse systemic harm. So the question is not, has Christianity ever done good? That just sidesteps the actual question. The real question is, how many stories of harm do you need to hear before you believe they matter just as much? Before you stop moving the goalpost and saying, well, no true Scotsman, no true Christian. We have to stop sweeping this under the rug. Just because we're invested in believing Christianity is good, that's not enough. Faith that can't be questioned is not faith. Can I say that again? Faith that cannot be questioned is not faith. That is brand loyalty. And people deserve better than that when it comes to religion. So please, stop responding to stories of harm with defensiveness. Stop reaching for slogans. Stop protecting the institution instead of the people. If someone tells you the church hurt them, the faithful Christian response is not, well, not all Christians. It's, I'm listening. I believe you. It's, what would accountability look like here? If Christianity is worth anything at all, it has to be able to face its own shadows without flinching, without explaining away, without spiritualizing, without rebranding. Repentance isn't saying, well, we're not like that. Repentance is changing the systems that keep producing that. And until the church cares as much about preventing harm as it does preserving its own image, people are going to keep leaving. And they'll be right to.